She spread wild rumors to avoid being claimed, until he saw through them and claimed her heart. High towers rose above the city like the spines of ancient beasts, and the great castle on the hill cast a shadow over every market, every alley, and every whispered conversation. Lady Alara walked alone through the shadowed gardens of her family estate, her cloak brushing against the wet grass. She kept her head low, careful to avoid the eyes of the few servants who lingered in the twilight. She had long learned that people spoke first, listened later, and judged fastest of all. To avoid being trapped by the ambitions of nobles and suitors, she had mastered the art of rumors. Not the idle kind that faded in a day, but the sort that burned like fire through gossiping tongues, rumors of curses, dark pacts, and strange destinies that seemed too wild to be true. Tonight, however, there was a different tension in the air, one she could not dismiss. A rider had arrived at the castle earlier, cloaked and silent, bringing word that Prince Kalen was returning to Eldraven after years at the frontier. Rumors had painted him as both feared and revered, a prince who had fought in battles no one dared recount, a man whose gaze alone could unravel lies. Alara had seen many suitors come and go, men who were charming yet blind to the cunning games of nobles. She had avoided them all, spinning stories that left them wary or foolish. She intended to do the same with Kalen, but there was something different about this man. The letters carried by his herald spoke of victories and courage, yes, but also of a mind sharp enough to cut through deception like a blade through silk. As the sun slipped behind the horizon, Alara moved to the grand hall, where the evening mask was already alive with music, laughter, and the soft glow of lanterns. Guests moved in flowing gowns and jeweled masks, their faces hidden, their intentions hidden deeper. It was a night of shadows, illusions, and whispered truths, perfect for Alara to exercise her favorite art. She entered with a flourish, eyes scanning the crowd. Every step was deliberate, her posture perfect, a smile ready on her lips. And then she saw him. Prince Kalen stood near the center of the hall, tall and still, as if the world had paused around him. His dark hair fell just above sharp shoulders, and his eyes, the color of storm clouds, seemed to look through the crowd rather than at it. His presence did not demand attention, it commanded it. A ripple of murmurs followed him, yet he appeared unconcerned. He was a man who did not chase shadows. He walked among them and they parted for him. Alara's heart stirred, though she would never admit it. She had told herself 1,000 times that no man would claim her. Her freedom was her crown, and no prince, no soldier, no lord of the court could take it. Yet in that instant, Kalen's calm, observant gaze made her feel like a mask she had worn for years was slipping. She approached, gliding through the dancers, and allowed herself to whisper the first of tonight's rumors. "They say," she said, her voice delicate yet carrying through the hum of music, "that Lady Alara is cursed. That anyone who tries to bind her will find misfortune, even death." A few masked nobles gasped and glanced around nervously. Alara allowed a mischievous smile. The seeds were sown. Kalen's gaze fell on her, and she caught the faintest curve of his lips, not mocking but knowing. He moved closer, weaving through the crowd without haste, until he stood mere paces from her. "You speak of curses," he said, his voice low but firm, carrying through the soft music. "Yet I wonder if you fear them, or if you wish them believed." Alara's smile faltered just for a heartbeat. Few dared speak to her so directly. Fewer still dared challenge her. "And what would a prince know of fears or wishes?" she asked lightly, tilting her head. "Perhaps more than you think," Kalen replied. His eyes were steady, unwavering, as if he had already seen through the mask she wore so carefully. "Rumors are easy to spread. Seeing the truth, that is the rare task." Alara's pulse quickened, a thrill she could not explain. No one had ever looked at her that way, through her stories, through her defenses, straight to the heart she had sworn to protect. The evening stretched on, and Alara tried her usual tactics. She whispered more tales of shadowy figures and unseen dangers. She hinted at alliances with spirits that haunted her lands. She wove stories of midnight duels and curses that could strike in the dead of night. Each tale was meant to push Kalen away, to remind him that she was untouchable, unclaimable. But Kalen did not recoil. He listened, a faint smile playing on his lips, and occasionally he asked a question that unsettled her. Not a question of curiosity, but one that cut straight to the heart of her reasoning. "Do you truly believe in these curses, Lady Alara, or is it only the power they give you?" She paused, words caught on the edge of her tongue. He could see through her. He could see through all the clever lies she had spun for years. And she found herself unable to fabricate an answer quickly enough. The dance ended, and the music softened to a low hum. Guests lingered, gossiping in small groups, but Alara felt the prince's presence as a weight beside her. "Why do you hide behind stories?" he asked quietly so only she could hear. "Why not simply show the world who you are?" Alara's laugh was light, but there was an edge of nervousness. "And risk being claimed," she whispered. "I am not so easily caught." Kalen's eyes darkened, not with anger but with a quiet certainty that made her pulse race. "Some things are not caught," he said. "They are chosen, and some hearts, once seen, cannot be left behind." She stepped back, startled by the intensity in his gaze. He was not threatening, he was not demanding, yet every word felt like a chain, binding her not by force but by the undeniable weight of truth. "Careful, Prince," she said with a teasing tilt of her head, masking her rising anxiety. "The rumors you hear, they are dangerous." "And yet I am here," he replied, a smile now curling on his lips. "Not afraid of shadows, not afraid of stories. I see you, Alara. Not the mask, not the whispers. You." The hall emptied slowly as midnight approached and the lanterns cast long, trembling shadows on the walls. Alara excused herself, claiming fatigue, but her mind was alight with the prince's words. For years she had hidden behind lies and legends, thinking herself safe. But for the first time, someone had not recoiled. Someone had not been fooled. Someone had seen her truly. As she stepped into the quiet garden behind the castle, the mist curling around her feet, she felt the tug of a power she had never allowed herself to feel: vulnerability. Fear and excitement mingled in her chest. Her hand rested lightly on the marble fountain, tracing the edge as if it could anchor her. A shadow moved through the mist, and she turned sharply, heart pounding. Kalen stepped into the moonlight, calm, deliberate, his presence commanding yet gentle. "You may run from suitors," he said softly, his eyes never leaving hers. "You may hide behind stories, behind whispers, but I do not chase shadows, Lady Alara." Her breath caught. She opened her mouth to reply, but no words came. "I claim what I see," he added, the finality in his voice like the edge of a sword. For a moment the world seemed to still, the wind, the mist, even the distant cries of owls. Alara felt a tremor through her carefully built walls. She had never imagined anyone could see through her so completely, and more terrifyingly, she did not want him to look away. Kalen stepped closer, just enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him, enough that the air between them vibrated with unspoken promises and untested truths. "I will not be fooled by tales," he said quietly. "I will not be driven away by rumors. I see you, Alara. All of you, and I will not let you hide forever." Alara swallowed hard, her mind racing, a thousand excuses ready to fling at him, yet none capable of stopping the pull she felt. She wanted to run, wanted to continue the careful dance of deception she had perfected. But something in Kalen's gaze, steady and unwavering, rooted her to the spot. The moonlight shimmered across the fountain, illuminating the mist like silver fire. And for the first time in her life, Alara felt that her freedom was not the absence of others, but the right to be seen and still remain herself. And yet, the shadow of fear lingered. She had not yet revealed her deepest secrets, the ones that could bind her not just to Kalen but to the world he represented. She was not ready, Not yet. Kalen inclined his head slightly, sensing her hesitation. We begin here, Alara, he said. Not with force, not with fear, but with truth. You can hide your heart, but you cannot hide it from me. Alara's lips parted and she found herself laughing softly, a sound like wind over glass. It was nervous, uncertain, yet there was a spark in it, a spark that Kalen had seen and perhaps had chosen. The mist swirled thicker around them, the night holding its breath. And in that moment, both understood that the game of whispers and shadows had changed. She could no longer pretend to be untouchable. And he had claimed the first piece of her heart, not by force, but by seeing the truth she had always hidden. The night deepened, the castle silent save for distant whispers. And Alara, standing in the moonlight, felt a thrill she could not name and a fear she could not deny. She had always been careful. She had always run. But for the first time she wondered, could she stand and let someone see her truly? And somewhere in the darkness, Kalen waited, patient yet certain, knowing that the night was only the beginning of a story neither of them could yet imagine. The first rays of dawn slipped over Eldraven, spilling pale light over the castle towers and the misted streets below. Lady Alara sat in her private chambers, staring out of the tall arched window. Her fingers traced the edges of an untouched goblet of tea, but her mind was elsewhere. The encounter from the previous night haunted her like a song she could not forget. Prince Kalen had seen through her lies, through the rumors she had spent years crafting. Alara had always believed that control was power. A whispered story could protect her, and a shadowed corridor could keep her safe. Yet Kalen had arrived, patient and steady, unshaken by her careful deceptions. He had spoken as though her defenses were transparent, as though her clever tales were nothing more than veils he could part with ease. Her heart betrayed her in ways she did not like. It quickened at the memory of his gaze, the soft certainty in his words. She had told herself it was fear disguised as attraction, yet she could not deny the pull she felt toward him. The notion of someone seeing her, truly seeing her, and choosing not to leave, unsettled her in a way no whispered curse ever could. Yet she was not ready to surrender. The rumors were her armor, and she would wield them once more. That evening, a gathering was held in the estate's great hall. The flickering lanterns cast tall shadows across the walls, dancing with every turn of the dancers and every sway of the noble ladies' gowns. Alara moved among the guests with practiced grace, a soft smile on her lips and a mind spinning new tales. "Lady Alara," whispered one young lord, bowing low, "I hear you walk among spirits at midnight. They say they speak only to you and answer your questions." Alara's lips curved into a subtle, knowing smile. "Ah," she said, her voice like silk, "then you must take care, for not all spirits are kind. Some are capricious." Her eyes flicked toward Kalen, who stood near the balcony, observing without effort, unbothered by the gossip and intrigue. Kalen's gaze met hers, steady and knowing. He did not move closer yet, but the silence between them spoke louder than any words. The prince had already learned to navigate her games, anticipating each misdirection without ever confronting her directly. She slipped away from the crowd, her steps silent on the polished marble. The lantern light fell behind her, leaving the hall in soft shadow. She needed to think, to plot her next move, and perhaps to hide from the pull she could not resist. In the gardens, the mist clung to the ground, curling around the roots of the ancient oaks and the statues of forgotten kings. Alara wandered among the paths, letting the cool air clear her thoughts. But she was not alone. A figure moved silently through the fog, and she recognized him before he spoke. "Running again, Lady Alara." Kalen's voice was low, not accusing but teasing in a way that made her pulse quicken. She stopped, hands resting lightly on the stone railing. "I am not running," she replied lightly, though her heart betrayed the truth. "I merely take care not to be caught unprepared." "Prepared for what?" Kalen asked, stepping closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "For the rumors you spread or for the truth you hide?" Ilara's chest tightened. He could pierce her defenses with a single question, yet he did not press further. He simply waited, a calm force against the storm she had cultivated for years. I, I prefer to stay free, she said finally, her voice almost a whisper. To move without constraint. To be unseen when I wish to be unseen. Kalen nodded slowly. Freedom, he said, does not mean hiding, and being unseen does not make one safe. Sometimes it is those who dare to be seen who are truly powerful. Her gaze fell to the mist curling around her feet. His words were simple, but they carried a weight she had never encountered before. Power without fear, courage without cruelty, and a patience that both frustrated and fascinated her. The next few days were a delicate dance. Ilara tried her usual tactics. Strange letters left in the library, rumors whispered in shadowed corridors, illusions of curses lurking around the edges of her estate. Each effort, however, was anticipated or deflected by Kalen, who seemed to move through her web of deception like a wind through reeds. One afternoon, in the heart of the enchanted forest surrounding her estate, she staged a final test. She led him through winding paths where the trees whispered secrets and the air shimmered with ancient magic. Ilara intended to frighten him, to see if he would flee like others had. Yet Kalen followed silently, unafraid of the illusions she conjured, unshaken by the shadows that twisted at the edges of her vision. He did not speak, did not judge. He simply observed, his calm presence anchoring her even as her mind raced. Finally, she turned to face him, her eyes bright with frustration and something deeper, something unspoken. "Why do you not fear?" she demanded. "Why do you not run?" Kalen's gaze softened. "Because I do not see fear in you," he said simply. "I see cleverness, courage, and the truth you hide behind stories. I came not to chase shadows, Lady Ilara, but to understand the light they obscure." Her breath caught. The words were like a key turning in a lock she had not realized she had built around her heart. For years, she had believed that stories, masks, and rumors could protect her. Now, in the quiet of the forest, she wondered if those very walls were keeping her from something she had longed for without knowing it. The days turned into weeks, and the tension between them deepened. Their encounters became a game of wit and subtle power, each testing the other in ways that left them both unsettled and intrigued. Ilara realized she had underestimated the prince's patience and insight. He did not seek to trap her nor to dominate. He simply moved through her defenses, offering glimpses of understanding, trust, and challenge in equal measure. One evening, during a feast in the Great Hall, a messenger arrived with urgent news. A rival noble house, long envious of Ilara's family and her supposed influence over the court, was plotting to claim her through marriage or manipulation. The threat was real, and it forced Ilara to confront the limits of her deceptions. Rumors could not protect her from ambition, nor could whispered tales of curses stop those who sought power. Kalen, ever watchful, noted her tension. After the guests departed, he found her in the quiet hall, her fingers tracing the carvings on the wooden banister as if seeking answers in the grain. "You cannot fight them alone," he said gently, "and you do not need to." Ilara shook her head. "I am skilled in my own ways," she said. "I have kept myself safe until now. I can do it again." "Safe is not the same as free," Kalen replied, "and freedom does not come from running or hiding. It comes from choosing who you trust and standing by that choice." Her eyes met his, and for the first time she felt the truth of his words settle within her. Trust was not weakness. Choosing to be seen was not surrender. And perhaps, Kalen was not the threat she had imagined, but a chance at something she had never allowed herself to hope for. That night, the forest around her estate shimmered with silver light, as if the world itself held its breath. Ilara walked along the winding paths, thinking of the prince, the rumors, and the strange pull she could not resist. Suddenly, a shadow moved ahead, and Kalen stepped into view, calm and deliberate. "You cannot keep running," he said softly. Not from those who wish to claim you, not from me. You may hide behind stories, Alara, but they will not protect you forever." She laughed softly, a sound filled with both amusement and nervousness. "And what if I do not wish to be claimed?" Kalen stepped closer and the mist curled around them like silver threads. "Then I will not force you," he said. "But understand this, hearts that are seen and not hidden are rarely abandoned. I will wait, I will watch, and I will claim what I see." Alara's chest tightened. She had always believed that freedom meant solitude, that stories could protect her from the world. Yet in the presence of Kalen, she realized that some risks were worth taking, and some truths were worth revealing. The night deepened, and the forest whispered its ancient secrets. Alara knew that her life was about to change, whether she welcomed it or not. Kalen's presence was not a threat, but a promise that the game of shadows and rumors had entered a new chapter, one she could neither control nor ignore. And as the wind carried the scent of blooming night flowers through the paths, Alara realized that she was no longer running. Not from Kalen, not from the truths she had long hidden, and not from the chance that perhaps, for the first time, her heart could belong to someone else. The night held its breath, and the distant moonlight glinted on Kalen's eyes, reflecting a patience and certainty that unsettled her more than any shadow ever could. The castle of Eldraven had grown quiet after the festival, but the tension in the air was far from gone. Rumors were like shadows that moved unseen, and Alara could feel the weight of them pressing against her every step. The rival noble house that sought to claim her had begun to act openly, using her reputation and whispered curses to manipulate allies and sow fear. The world she had carefully controlled for years now seemed to spin beyond her reach. Alara paced the length of her private chambers, her thoughts tangled in knots. For years, she had relied on her wit and cunning, her clever stories to keep those who would claim her at bay. And yet, for the first time, she realized her games were no longer enough. Her heart had betrayed her, fluttering at the memory of Kalen's unwavering gaze, and her fears had begun to shift. She could not hide forever. Kalen's presence had become both a comfort and a challenge. He was patient, never pressing too hard, but his insight pierced her carefully woven illusions. She found herself thinking of him constantly, wondering what he truly saw and whether he understood the chaos behind her calm exterior. That evening, she ventured into the castle courtyard, the moonlight washing over the marble fountains and the statues of forgotten kings. The air was thick with mist, curling around her ankles like living threads. She felt the tension of the past week settle in her chest as a soft sound of footsteps approached. Kalen emerged from the shadows, his expression calm, but his eyes alight with focus. "You should not wander alone tonight," he said, voice low and certain. "There are those who would use the darkness to their advantage." Alara laughed softly, brushing past him with a teasing tilt of her head. "I am not so easily frightened, Prince Kalen. I have faced shadows far longer than you have walked these halls." "And yet," he replied, stepping closer, "the shadows have grown bolder, and you are no longer hidden within them." Her chest tightened and she turned to face him fully. "I do not need saving," she said, the words sharp but faltering under the weight of truth. "I have always protected myself." Kalen's gaze softened, but his voice remained steady. "This is not about saving, Alara. This is about standing together. You have strength, yes, but even the strongest cannot stand alone against the storms that come." The storm he spoke of was not weather, but the threat from the rival house. Reports had arrived of soldiers moving through the northern passes, spies within the city, and whispers of betrayal among those who had once sworn loyalty to Alara's family. The time for games and stories had passed. Action was required, and she knew it. Alara's thoughts turned inward, recalling the moment she had first met Kalen at the masquerade. He had not been afraid of her tales, nor had he been deceived by the shadows she had cast. He had seen her truly, and had chosen to remain. That memory, once thrilling, now bore a weight of responsibility she could not ignore. She had run from others, spun lies to keep herself free, but Kalen had refused to leave, refusing to chase shadows and instead claiming what he saw. The next days were filled with preparation. Alara moved through the castle, coordinating defenses, sending messages to loyal allies and ensuring the safety of her estate. Kalen followed, not intruding, but assisting with a calm authority that unsettled her. They spent hours in the library, poring over maps and letters, strategizing for threats that lurked both within and beyond the city walls. One night, as rain fell in steady sheets against the windows, they found themselves alone in the castle's hidden library, surrounded by towering shelves of books that seemed to whisper forgotten knowledge. The storm outside made the room feel small, intimate, and alive with a quiet intensity. "You have grown so strong," Kalen said quietly, studying her as she traced her finger along an old map. "Yet you hide a part of yourself even now. Why?" Alara's hand froze. "Because strength alone is not enough," she replied, her voice soft. "Because showing what is inside can be dangerous." Kalen moved closer, the warmth of his presence filling the space between them. "Dangerous, yes, but necessary. You cannot protect everything by hiding. Even the strongest walls have cracks, and even the sharpest shields cannot stop the heart from choosing." Her breath caught. He spoke as if he knew her entirely, as if he could see the turmoil she had buried beneath stories and rumors. She had always believed that being clever and careful was enough, but now she realized that her heart had been laying bare to him for longer than she cared to admit. Before she could respond, a messenger arrived, soaked from the rain, bearing news of the rival house's sudden attack. Soldiers had moved quickly, seizing control of a nearby fortress and capturing several of her allies. The warning left no time for hesitation. Alara's hands trembled slightly, but Kalen's calm presence steadied her. "We go together," he said simply, "not as prince and noble, but as partners. You will not face this alone." They rode through the night, the rain lashing against their cloaks, the forest a blur of shadows and silver light. Alara's heart pounded with fear and excitement. She had always believed she must face the world alone, but now she felt the weight of another's trust beside her, guiding her, strengthening her. The fortress came into view, its towers dark against the stormy sky. The rival forces had expected her fear, her hesitation. But they had not counted on the union of minds and hearts that stood before them now. Kalen and Alara moved with precision, commanding their small group of loyal soldiers, weaving strategy, courage, and cunning into every step. Inside the fortress walls, they found the captives, guarded by men who had underestimated their opponents. Alara's clever planning and Kalen's unshakable presence allowed them to move silently, freeing their allies before the enemy could react. As they emerged into the storm, the wind and rain whipping around them, Alara felt a thrill of triumph, but also a deeper understanding of her feelings. Kalen had not merely protected her. He had chosen to stand with her, not because he must, but because he had seen her worth, her truth. Later, when the fortress was secured and the captives safe, Kalen and Alara stood on a high balcony, rain dripping from the stone ledges. The storm had passed, leaving the night air heavy with freshness and possibility. "You have grown," Kalen said, voice soft but firm, "in ways that words cannot capture, and yet you still hide pieces of yourself." Alara looked at him, her heart aching with the longing she had long denied. "I do not know how to stop hiding," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I have always relied on stories, on shadows." Kalen reached out, a hand hovering near hers. "Then allow me to see them with you," he said gently. "The shadows do not frighten me, Alara, and the truth of your heart, I would not let it go, even if I could." For a long moment she considered the weight of his words. Trust was terrifying. Choosing to be seen was dangerous. Yet for the first time, Alara felt the possibility that being claimed did not mean losing herself. It could mean finding someone who understood the very depths of her, someone who would not flee the darkness she had long hidden. The night deepened around them, the stars emerging slowly from the storm clouds, and in that quiet, luminous moment, a change occurred. Elara felt a subtle shift within herself, the acceptance that her stories, her rumors, her clever defenses were no longer enough. The heart, she realized, demanded courage beyond cunning. Before either could speak again, a distant horn sounded from the northern gates of the city, a warning from scouts. The rival house had regrouped, gathering forces for another strike, one that threatened not only her life but the fragile balance of the kingdom itself. Kaelin's hand finally brushed hers, not forcefully, but in a connection that spoke volumes. "We face this together," he said. "Not as prince and noble, but as allies, and perhaps as something more." Elara's chest tightened, a mixture of fear, anticipation, and an unspoken longing. She had spent years hiding behind shadows, behind stories, behind clever lies. Now she faced a storm she could not escape, and for the first time she did not want to. The night held its breath, and the castle around them seemed to pulse with the same anticipation. The rival forces would come. The kingdom's future hung in the balance. And Elara, standing beside Kaelin, felt the fragile spark of a truth she had long denied. That the heart, once seen, could not be ignored. The night of the festival was alive with whispers and lantern light, but the warmth of celebration was shattered by the sound of approaching horns. Elara, hidden within the grand hall of the castle, felt a chill crawl up her spine. The rival house had acted faster than anyone anticipated, their forces moving with precision to capture her. Her heart raced as she heard the first sounds of conflict outside, shouts, clashing metal, and the distant cries of soldiers. The careful walls she had built around herself, the rumors she had woven like armor, meant nothing now. She had faced danger before, but this was different. This was not a story she could control, and the stakes were far higher than her own safety. Before she could act, the doors burst open and masked figures swept in. Elara barely had time to raise her arms before she was seized, their grip firm and unyielding. She struggled, but the force of numbers was overwhelming. Panic surged through her, but beneath it, a small flame of trust flickered. Kaelin had promised to stand with her. Outside, the prince rode at full speed, his cloak billowing like dark wings behind him. He had anticipated the rival house's attack, but the timing had caught even him off guard. His horse thundered over the courtyard, eyes blazing with determination, sword raised to meet the enemy. Elara's captors dragged her through the shadows, the festival lights fading behind her. Her mind raced, thoughts of escape and strategy intertwining. And yet, amid the fear, there was an awareness of Kaelin, a certainty that he would not allow her to remain in danger. Through the winding corridors and hidden passages of the rival fortress, Elara kept her composure, relying on her wit to observe and calculate. The men who had taken her believed her frightened, compliant, and easily manipulated. She let them, knowing that the smallest slip could become her advantage. Meanwhile, Kaelin moved like a force of nature. The clash of swords, the roar of horses, and the cries of soldiers filled the night air, but his focus never wavered. Every movement, every decision was precise, calculated, and filled with purpose. He did not act out of anger or fear, but from a deep-seated resolve to protect the one he had chosen. Hours passed in a blur of strategy and confrontation. Elara found herself in a chamber high above the fortress halls, looking down on the courtyard where Kaelin had fought like a storm unleashed. The sight steadied her, reinforcing the thought she had buried deep within herself, that he would not abandon her even when the odds seemed impossible. A sudden opportunity arose. One of the captors, careless and arrogant, left a window unlatched. Elara's heart leapt. She had always relied on her intelligence, her cunning, and now those traits became her means of survival. She slipped silently through the window, the cool night air brushing her face, and moved toward the sounds of Kalen's battle. Below, Kalen's presence dominated the battlefield. His sword cut through the chaos with elegance and precision, each movement both protective and commanding. He did not fight recklessly, but with a quiet assurance that inspired those around him. Soldiers who had feared defeat rallied at his side, drawn not just to his skill, but to the certainty that he was a man who would not abandon them, or her. Elara crept closer, heart pounding as she saw him from above. Their eyes met, even in the chaos, and she felt a surge of trust and courage she had never experienced before. This was not the game of shadows she had mastered for years. This was real. This was raw. And it required more than clever stories or whispered rumors. It required courage, action, and a willingness to be seen. With a swift motion, she dropped down behind a stack of crates, moving closer to the fight. She could not wield a sword like Kalen, but she could use her intelligence, her knowledge of the fortress, and the lessons she had learned in secrecy and strategy. The enemy had underestimated her, as they always did, and she used that to her advantage, creating diversions and unlocking passages that allowed loyal allies to join the fight. Kalen noticed her, his eyes briefly locking with hers. A flicker of relief passed over his features, though the battle raged around them. He had claimed her heart, as he had said, but now he had to reclaim her body from those who sought to control it. And Elara, standing in the storm of chaos, realized the truth in his earlier words. She could not hide from what she felt, nor from what he had chosen. The battle reached its peak in the central courtyard. Alara's careful maneuvers had given Kalen and his forces the advantage, but the rival leaders remained, defiant and dangerous. Kalen moved toward them, sword gleaming under the lantern light, his presence commanding and unstoppable. Each step he took was deliberate, each strike precise. He was a force that could not be ignored, a storm that had claimed its focus, and his focus was her. Elara, watching from the shadows, felt an unfamiliar but welcome thrill of admiration. He had never boasted, never sought glory for himself. Everything he did was calculated, purposeful, and rooted in the promise he had made, to stand with her, to protect her, to claim her, not as possession but as choice. The final clash was swift. The rival leaders were unprepared for the coordination and courage of the forces they had sought to manipulate. Kalen's blade found its mark, precise and controlled, disabling the leaders without unnecessary cruelty. The remaining soldiers, seeing their leaders defeated, fled into the night, leaving the fortress under Kalen's control. Elara descended into the courtyard, the rain dripping from her cloak, mixing with sweat and mud. She moved toward Kalen, who was sheathing his sword, his expression calm but intense. For a long moment they simply looked at one another, the storm around them fading into the gentle whisper of rain. "You came," Kalen said quietly, as if reading her thoughts. "I did not want to be saved," Elara replied softly, "but I knew I could not face it alone." Kalen smiled faintly, his hand brushing hers, gentle and steady. "You never had to," he said. "Not from me, not from the truth you hide, not from the heart you have guarded so carefully." The world seemed to pause. The castle, the fortress, the distant stars, all faded into insignificance beside the connection between them. Elara felt the weight of years of secrecy, of whispered stories, of careful deception, lift slightly. For the first time, she allowed herself to be seen completely. They walked through the empty courtyard together, the storm now just a drizzle. Each step was deliberate, each moment charged with the unspoken understanding that they were no longer merely prince and noblewoman, but partners in a shared destiny. Back in the safety of the castle, Elara faced the truth she had long avoided. The rumors she had spread, the stories she had woven, had once been her shields. They had kept her safe, yes, but they had also kept her from being known truly. Kalen had seen her, not the mask, not the shadows, but the real Elara, and he had not faltered. I was afraid, she admitted finally, her voice trembling with both fear and relief. Afraid of being claimed, of being seen, of losing myself. Kalen's hand found hers again, steady and reassuring. You are not lost, he said softly. You are found. And being claimed does not mean surrendering. It means choosing someone who sees you truly and stays. Tears blurred her vision, not of sorrow, but of release. For years she had run from the world, from the consequences of truth, from the very heart she had buried. And now she realized running was no longer necessary. She had been claimed, not by force, but by recognition, understanding, and the unwavering choice of a man who would not turn away. The dawn broke over Eldraven, spilling golden light over the towers and gardens. The kingdom was safe for now and the rival house defeated. Alara and Kalen stood together on the castle balcony, watching as the city slowly awoke, bathed in morning light. You saw me, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the gentle wind. I did, Kalen replied, a faint smile curving his lips. And now no shadow can touch you, not your stories, not your fears, not your past. You are yours, Alara, and I am here as you chose. For a long moment, they simply stood together, letting the morning air fill them with warmth and promise. The rumors had ended, the shadows had been faced, and the heart that had been hidden for so long could finally be free. Yet somewhere beyond the castle walls, in the depths of the enchanted forests and the distant hills, an ancient magic stirred. The world was not done with stories, not done with shadows, and not done with the heart of Eldraven. But for now, in the quiet light of dawn, Alara and Kalen allowed themselves the rare luxury of peace, understanding, and the certainty that their bond was unbroken. The kingdom could wait. The world could wait. For they had found something rarer than power, rarer than fame, rarer than victory. They had found each other. And as the wind whispered through the towers and the mist dissolved under the golden sun, Alara finally smiled, not as a mask, not as a tale, but as herself, wholly and completely. And Kalen, watching her with quiet reverence, knew that he had claimed more than a heart, he had claimed a soul.